Hey guys, so I'm not sure if a disclaimer is all that necessary if you've seen the thumbnail, but just in case, if you're not into anything horror, this may not be a video for you. I've had a few requests to do something inspired by the game Until Dawn, and the past few days I've been watching the gameplay and really been enjoying it, so I was inspired to do a Wendigo. Hope you'll enjoy. I first removed the hair, and for this doll, because we are going to be covering up everything, you don't need to remove the face. I then used polymer clay to make an impression of the doll's face mold, and then use a mold putty to make a mold that I'm going to be sculpting the mask on. Because I wanted the mouth to be open, I cut off the original bottom lip from the doll itself, and I did this to the mold as well. And then once you have that, you can start sculpting. Because the doll itself is grey, I just used some grey polymer clay to sort of match the same color. And the color doesn't have to be accurate because we're going to be applying some paint to pretty much the entire thing. For the sculpt, I first kind of carved or marked off the eyes to make them look a bit more three-dimensional. If you wanted to, you could add some clay to make the eyes look nice and rounded on the inside as well, but I'm going to be using some resin later, so I'm not going to worry about that right at this moment. I also made sure to make some nice bags under the eyes and also hollow out the cheeks a bit. And then if you want, you can also add kind of like a frown where the eyebrows are gonna go, as well as some wrinkles on the forehead. After making the base for the mouth, I did pre-bake before adding the gums and teeth. When doing something like this, it's just easier to have that nice pre-baked base rather than have the clay be flopping around. I added some texture to the skin using a toothbrush. And say hello to Grandpa Wendigo. Once you're done, you want to bake it, and after baking, just glue it in place. Now, if you don't want it to be permanent, you can use this as a loose mask and skip the creation of the scalp itself, in which case you'd probably also want to avoid cutting off the jaw. But this one is going to be a permanent Wendigo, and so to blend the mask to the scalp and also cover up where the original hair was, I just used some tea bags. To apply these, you just want to rip them into various smaller sized pieces and then use some white craft glue to glue them in place. You can apply as many pieces and layers as you want depending on how smooth you want the look and how neat you want it. I purposely wanted some texture to make it look more rough and horror-like, so I didn't worry about making it look too neat. As I mentioned previously, I used resin for the inside of the eyes. And for this doll I am using UV resin because I want to use it a few times throughout the process of creating this. And so UV resin is just a bit faster to use. For the details or the repaint I used a few shades of pastel, acrylic paint, and 2 colors of my watercolor pencils. I first used gray paint to make the scalp and the mask, body, etc. all match up, and I applied a lot of it in a stippling motion to kind of add a tiny bit of texture and interest. Next, because the Wendigo I was looking at does appear to be a skin color, even though it is a very dark game, I added some foundation or acrylic paint as well. And for the rest of the details, I pretty much went back and forth between pastel and paint. I first used some grey pastel to darken up the hollows of the eyes as well as the cheekbones. I then use some black paint to define the eyes and also paint the inside of the mouth. And I then added some more shading using some red, purple, brownish and yellow pastel. I also applied a second layer of resin to the eyes, this time mixed in with some white acrylic paint. And for the eyebrows I used a watercolor pencil and some acrylic paint. For most of the blood I used acrylic paint, and then I mixed some of it in with some of the resin to get a more 3D effect. Finish off with some glaze, and you're done.